But it is a great pleasure to welcome the minister here to Miramichi. The minister and I actually met a few years ago in Ottawa when he was the parliamentary secretary for infrastructure portfolio to discuss the still pending multiplex project. The minister was supportive then and continues to be. And so we're looking forward to securing the province's support as well so we can move that file forward. But that's not why we're here today. Hopefully we'll have another announcement another time, Minister. But today I am going to, it is my pleasure to welcome the Minister and his daughter to Miramichi and to turn the podium over for today's announcement. So please join me in a warm welcome for Minister Mendicino.
Thank you very much, Mayor. Bonjour tout le monde. And I also want to take a moment to welcome Deputy Chief Cummings, who has been serving the community here in Miramichi, I understand, for 33 years. So it's truly an honor to have you, sir, join us for this important announcement today. Avant que je commence, je veux prendre un moment pour parler des événements à Montréal. Nous sommes de tout cœur avec les Montréalais et les Montréalises. Je sais qu'il y a beaucoup de gens qui se sentent inquiets au moment. Je vais continuer de travailler en étroite collaboration avec la mairesse Plante et mon homologue, le ministre Guibault, et tout autre intervenant pour arrêter la violence armée, parce que c'est inacceptable. Ça compris des politiques intelligentes comme le projet de loi C-21, comme par exemple aussi augmenter les peines pour les trafiquants des armes à feu et autres criminels. Les gens à Montréal méritent de se sentir en sécurité dans leur communauté. Bon après-midi tout le monde. And as we begin, I would like to acknowledge that we are gathered on the traditional territories here of the Mi'kmaq. And I want to thank Mayor Lordon for welcoming us to Miramichi today, and it's good to see you again. And of course, we will continue to advocate for the multiplex project, which I do recall having a great conversation about a number of years back, but it is in keeping with the announcement that we are going to be making today. And indeed, I am thrilled to be here in Miramichi, what is also known as Canada's Irish capital. This is a proud and resilient city, a place that has seen its amazing share of successes and positive contributions, but has also seen some challenges with regards to public safety and to crime. And again, I want to take a moment to thank the Miramichi Police and the Deputy Chief for all of the work that you do to keep this community safe as we stand here in Ritchie Wharf against a beautiful backdrop of the river and the playground here, noting representatives of the community who are here. Miramichi is like many other communities right across the country. There are good days and there are challenging days, and it's really important that we work together to keep our community safe. You know, in New Brunswick, we've seen challenges with regards to gun crime, and certainly between the years of 2009 and 2020, sadly, we have seen gun crime go up. And as I say, it's not a phenomenon or a trend that is restricted to this community, but it is a trend that we have been seeing right across the country. And as Minister of Public Safety, I have to underline that that's unacceptable, that we do have to continue to work harder to redouble our efforts to see gun crime go down. And that's why we are here today. Now, I will say that part of the reason for the tour is to be able to establish direct and personal relationships with the community leadership. So I'm very honored to have the mayor here, the deputy chief here, and other representatives from the municipality. Les Canadiennes s'inquiètent avec raison des crimes violents que nous continuons de voir dans nos villes, comme nous l'avons vu ici. Une grande partie de cette violence est liée à l'activité des groupes criminalisés. Ces activités se font de plus en plus dans des endroits publics, souvent en plein jour. C'est inacceptable et ça nous met tous en danger. On peut les mesurer par les chiffres. et les chiffres sont frappants. Entre 2009 et 2019, l'utilisation criminelle des armes à feu a augmenté d'un incroyable 81% au Canada. What I just said was that we have seen gun crime go up dramatically over the course of a roughly 10-year period between 2009 and 2019, and we have to stop that trend, and we have to reverse that trend. People in Miramichi deserve it. People right across the province of New Brunswick deserve it. All Canadians deserve it. And that means stopping gun violence before it starts. And that's exactly why we created the Building Safer Communities Fund earlier this year. It provides funding to municipalities and Indigenous communities so that they can support important and essential work to prevent gun violence. With $250 million in federal funding, it takes direct aim at the root causes of gun crime by backing and supporting local organizations and initiatives to prevent gun violence and to help those who are especially at risk, including young people, so that we can stop it before it starts. And that brings me to why we are here today. I'm very proud to announce that the City of Miramichi will receive nearly $1 million from the Building Safer Communities Fund to prevent gun and gang violence. The city will distribute the money to local organizations that help address gun and gang violence and set young people up for success in life. Je suis très heureux d'annoncer que la ville de Miramichi recevra presque $1 million du fonds pour bâtir des communautés plus sécuritaires afin de prévenir la violence armée. La ville distribuera ensuite cet argent à des organismes locaux qui aident à prévenir la violence armée, à la violence liée aux gangs et à préparer les jeunes à réussir dans la vie. Now, I've had the chance to speak to the mayor and to the deputy chief a little bit about what those organizations may look like. And for example, I'm told that there's a women's emergency shelter that's close by the wharf here. Or we have the Youth at Risk organization. And my sincere hope is that they and others will step up, will make the application to the municipality. And my department will work very closely with the city of Miramichi to ensure that we distribute those funds in a way that helps to leverage their experience, their skills, their wisdom on what works for Miramichi so that we can get at those root causes, as I said. To make it a reality, we need to tackle the root of the problem, the conditions that spur someone, especially sometimes young people who are at risk, to make the wrong choices. There's a quote that often I refer to that says, quote, "No kid wakes up at 13-year-old and says, I'm going to be a gang member today." And that was said by Floyd Weeb, whose son TJ was sadly killed in a gang-related murder several years ago. We need to help prevent that kind of tragedy from occurring again. And even more importantly, we need to keep them from getting into that situation in the first place. Bien sûr, le Fonds pour des collectivités plus sûres n'est qu'une partie du programme de notre gouvernement pour protéger les Canadiens contre la violence armée. Cela commence à nos frontières, avec des investissements importants pour lutter contre le contrebande et le trafic d'armes à feu. Il comprend d'interdiction par notre gouvernement des armes de type assaut comme les AR-15 et AR-15. Cette année, nous lancerons notre programme de rachat pour éliminer une fois pour toutes ces armes de guerre de nos roues. Plus tôt ce mois-ci, nous avons franchi une étape importante dans son élaboration avec la publication de projets de liste de prix. La pièce maîtresse de notre travail est le projet de loi C-21, l'action la plus importante sur la violence armée au Canada depuis une génération. Cela met en œuvre un gel national des armes de poing, aborde le rôle des armes à feu dans la violence familiale et s'attaque au crime organisé. As I conclude, I want to emphasize that no single initiative or measure holds the solution to gun violence. To address a challenge of this scale and complexity, we have to do three things. We have to introduce good, smart common laws like Bill C-21. We need to continue to support law enforcement at our borders to stop the illegal flow of guns into Canada. And we need to continue to invest in preventative strategies like the rollout of the Building Safer Communities Fund. And that is why I am very pleased to have been able to make this important announcement today here in Miramichi, along with the Mayor and the Deputy Chief. Merci beaucoup.
On va prendre maintenant des questions.
Oh, the Mayor, I think.
Oh, thank you. And thank you so much, Minister, for being here and for the good news of today's announcement. Certainly here in Miramichi, we know that crime, dealing with crime is not just an enforcement issue, but also a prevention issue. And that preventing crime is not simply a criminal issue, but a social one. And so that's why we're so pleased with today's announcement, because these funds will allow us to address the underlying social issues that lead to crime. And so we're thrilled to look forward to working with so many great community organizations that do the type of work that will help us support vulnerable populations, especially vulnerable youth, and address some of those underlying social issues like mental health and addictions issues. Because ultimately, enforcement is not the only outcome. We have to stop it before we get there and support those that are in vulnerable positions so that they can choose other paths and have the support they need to do so. So we're looking forward to getting into the meat and potatoes of how we can help the community. I'll be meeting with the Minister after the announcement, and so looking forward to our discussion. Once again, thank you, Minister, and I will now turn it over to Alex, who I believe will handle some questions. Thanks again.
Jumped the gun a little bit there earlier. Donc, on passera maintenant à la période des questions. We will now have a few questions. Pretty standard, one question, one follow-up. And you could go over to the mic there if you need to be heard. And I will leave it to journalists now.
Allô?
Hello.
I'm gonna adjust the mic. Question en français, c'est correct avec vous? Merci, premièrement, pour l'annonce, bravo. Je vous avais mentionné le chiffre de 81% qui a monté lié à la violence aux armes à feu. Selon vous, qu'est-ce qui fait que le chiffre est si élevé? Qu'est-ce qui s'est passé que ça a monté comme ça? Est-ce que c'est trop simple d'obtenir une arme? Vraiment, qu'est-ce que vous pensez qui a créé ce chiffre-là?
Je pense que le défi avec la violence causée par les armes à feu est tellement complexe. Il n'y a pas seulement une raison, il y a plein de raisons. Il y a plein de causes profondément qui causaient une tendance qui est vraiment négative, qui a un impact qui est tragique dans des communautés. Et comme j'avais dit à le commencement de mes remarques ce matin, mes pensées étaient avec la communauté au Montréal, avec les Montréalais et Montréalises. Je restais en contact avec la mairesse Plante. Je sais que elle et sa équipe sont vraiment engagés avec l'enjeu. Et même, il faut travailler ensemble avec la province du Québec. Et je sais que la ministre Guilbeault est toujours là pour une bonne collaboration avec le gouvernement fédéral. Il y a 2 ou 3 semaines qu'on avait transféré de le côté du gouvernement fédéral plus de 40 millions de dollars avec une stratégie pour soutenir une stratégie de prévention sous ce programme-là, le bâtir des communautés plus en sécuritaire. Et avec ce fonds, on peut travailler ensemble avec les organismes locaux. On peut utiliser leur sagesse, leur expérience pour prévenir la violence causée par les armes à feu. Le travail n'est pas facile, il est toujours difficile parce que le problème est complexe. Mais le status quo est inacceptable avec plusieurs de fusillades à Montréal, avec une perte de vie innocente. Il faut continuer avec une stratégie compréhensive. Mais l'argent par seul ne peut pas réduire le problème. Il faut aussi avancer avec des bonnes lois, par exemple le C-21. Et ça, c'est la raison que j'espère on peut passer cette loi aussitôt que possible, avec un gel national pour les armes de poing. Et c'est les armes de poing qui sont utilisées dans les homicides. C'est le type d'arme à feu qui est utilisé le plus fréquemment. Donc, il faut continuer avec le travail. Merci.
Good afternoon, I guess it is now. Nathan DeLong with the Miramichi Leader. My first question is for the minister. What would your response be to, critics of initiatives like this who would say maybe that throwing more money at the solution, at the issue is not the problem, and that initiatives around firearms control unfairly target law-abiding firearms owners? What would your response be to those types of sentiments?
Move past old talking points. They're empty. They're useless. They don't actually advance the debate. That's what I would say. I'm here to debate with all Canadians, and especially those who are responsible, law-abiding hunters and recreational shooters for whom I have the utmost respect because I know that they place a paramount value on safety. But, simply trotting out a talking point doesn't actually solve the problem. And in response, I would say that what the Government of Canada has done through the leadership of my department in public safety is put forward and put into action a comprehensive strategy to reduce gun violence, which composes of 3 pillars. 1, smart, common sense gun laws, like Project C-21, like Bill C-21, which has a national freeze on handguns, which would introduce red flag laws to help better protect women who are disproportionately impacted by violence caused by gun crime, and which would raise maximum sentences for hardened, organized criminals who would try to terrorize our communities. So let's pass that law. Nearly 8 out of 10 Canadians supports that law. Why? Because it makes sense. Because it's backed by law enforcement. Because it's backed by victims and survivors and women's groups. Let's pass that law. And the only party right now that's standing in the way of that are the Conservatives. We've made some good headway with the Bloc Québécois and with the NDP, and I think there's continued room there to have a constructive dialogue on how we can improve the bill and make sure that it has the greatest impact. But let's pass it. Let's work together. Second, continue to invest in law enforcement at our borders. And I'm touring throughout the summer, seeing firsthand the good work that is being done by CBSA and the RCMP so that we can build on the successes that we've made over the last number of years in continuing to increase the total number of illegal firearms which are being seized. So let's do that. And third and finally, let's attack the problem at its root causes. Let's stop gun crime before it starts. And our vision of how that would work is through the Building Safer Communities Fund. And when you partner with local communities and organizations, whether women's shelters or youth groups, you can really channel the experiences that they have, the relationships that they have on the ground with young people who are exposed to risks like being exposed to organized crime or guns themselves. So we need to do those 3 things. And that's how we'll start to move the needle in the right direction.
Thank you. Those are some common criticisms I've heard, so thank you for addressing that. My follow-up question would be for the mayor or the deputy chief, whichever of you can speak to this. I'm wondering if you could just give us a sense of how the funding that's being provided to the city of Miramichi will be administered. Like, will groups working, on addressing these problems have to apply to the municipality for a share of that funding, or just how will that work?
Yeah, thanks, Nathan. And I am looking forward to meeting with the minister after this announcement to ask for some of those details. And speaking with City Manager Noel earlier this morning, I understand it is up to the city to effectively build out a program and an application process. And make no mistake, it's our intention to ensure that the funds are used as effectively as possible to help vulnerable populations in our community and to help them avoid getting into some of these circumstances and help make sure that they have the resources and support they need, perhaps for mental health and addictions issues, as an example, or suicide prevention. We know that, as the minister mentioned, the stats indicate that this type of crime is on the rise across the country. Certainly we know in our community, although we might not have the prevalence of gangs or even significant gun violence, we know that crime has gone up, in particular around addiction issues. And so looking into making sure that we can provide support to get people out of that, off that path is something that I'm quite excited about. As a municipality, we never have enough resources. And so for us now to be working in partnership with the federal government to have additional resources to go directly to supporting vulnerable populations in the community is something I'm really looking forward to building out. So ultimately, it's my understanding, yes, that groups will apply to the city once we've had the opportunity to build out a program based on best practices of how the funds can be used most effectively. Thanks.
Thank you.
Not to put him on the spot, but Deputy Chief, increasingly when you guys put out press releases, particularly about drug busts, we're seeing more and more seizure of restricted and illegal firearms. It seems like almost every one now you're seizing firearms. Can you speak to how many firearms you guys are seeing now, what it's like on the street as a police force?
I can't give you specific numbers, Darcy, but I can tell you that in the last 3 or 4 years, we have seen a marked increase in the number of firearms that we are seizing, whether it be in drug busts that we do into residences or seizures that we do in vehicle stops. That's not something that we saw 9-10 years ago, but we see it much more today, and I can tell you that hardly a week goes by that we don't seize a gun now in a criminal circumstance, and it's almost always connected to drugs in some way, shape, or form. So the announcement today by the minister and by the federal government is very welcome by us, and we will certainly put the funds to good use here in the city of Miramichi.
D'autres questions? No? Thank you very much. Merci beaucoup.